In this tutorial, we're going to be using ProCamera2D and Unity to create the camera from Super Mario Bros. 3's scrolling stages. We're going to be doing it in under 5 minutes. If you haven't played Super Mario Bros. 3 before, I highly suggest you go do it. In fact, stop the video, go play it now, and when you come back, you'll have noticed that the camera doesn't actually follow Mario in these stages. It moves on its own special track. We're going to do the same. So the very first thing that you're going to do is drag and drop ProCamera2D onto the main camera. This is normally where we would assign our player as the target, but the player isn't the target. Instead, we're going to create an empty game object, and I will call this auto scroller. You'll assign it as the target, and then just move that. Now, you could do this in very fancy ways, and you can use animations, things like that, but this is by far the easiest. And we're going to create a script to move this auto scroller, and I'll just call it auto scroller as well. And this is the easiest script in the world. If Visual Studio will load. So I'm going to create a public float, speed equals, let's make it 10. And I'm going to say transform.local position plus equals vector3.right times speed times time delta time. You should know what all this is. It's okay to use vector3 and vector2. The third part of the vector3 is the z-axis. We're not using that. We're only using x, which is right. See that 1, 0, 0? That 1 is the x-axis. It comes first. If you don't understand any of this, go and read Unity's documentation. You should at least roughly understand this before you get started. So back in Unity, I'm going to take this auto scroller and drag and drop it onto the auto scroller. Now I can alter the speed. I can increase it or decrease it if I want. And I'm going to select play. And this auto scroller is going to move on its own. And that is what the camera is following. So now we have a scrolling level. That was pretty fast, pretty simple, but this lacks polish. There's a lot of things that we can improve. I died. The very first thing that we want to improve on this is we want to add a numeric boundary. This is just good polish. And a numeric boundary just stops the camera from moving past a certain point. So I'm using a bottom numeric boundary, it's this white line up here, and I'm just dragging it down. And now the camera will not go below that line. So when I hit play, you can see the camera is not moving below this line. Even if I drag the auto scroller down, which is the camera's target, it's still not going to go below this line. The next thing we're going to do is we want to add the ability to move the camera up and down vertically. We want a track for it to follow. We don't just want left and right. To do this, we're going to use the Rails extension. When you select Enable, it's going to ask you for your target. So I'm going to drag and drop the auto scroller, because that's our target. And these white boxes appear. They might be a little bit out of the way, so you have to look for them. But you click and drag these boxes, and these are the rails that the camera follows. You'll notice in between them, there's a small, it's a little difficult to see, small white box. If you click there, it creates another node. This allows you to create a full track. So I can add as many nodes as I want. And this is what the camera is going to follow. And I'm just going to make the camera go way high. So now, as the camera reaches this track, it's going to start moving up. Now you'll notice it's not directly on the track. It's influenced by the track, but it's not snapped to it. And now we have this vertical stage. And if we wanted to get fancy, I probably don't have time for this in the 5-minute one. If we wanted to get fancy, let's increase the speed. So now this camera is going to move to the right, and then it's going to move up. And then that was awful, but it's moving down. You can see that you can follow the track. And we're done except for one small thing. What happens if you walk to the left? In a Mario Bros. 3 game, you hit a wall. In this one, you just walk off the side. We want to fix that. And again, we could be fancy, or we could take one of these existing blocks, and I'm just going to move this outside of that block manager. And I'm going to delete this extra shadow that I added on earlier. And I'm going to increase its size. And this is just a box collider that interacts with my player. That's all it is. And I'm going to add that to the auto scroller. Now, because it is the child of the auto scroller, it moves with it. And now I have a wall that pushes my player. That's really ugly, so I'm going to turn off the sprite renderer, and you'd want to position it correctly, so that way it functions as the left wall, but this is a really, really cheap and easy way. So you can see the wall's in the wrong position, but it's pushing my player. Now, you'd want to tweak this and tinker with it to make it work, but all in all, this is now a working scrolling stage. All it takes is a little fine-tuning and care as you're creating your stage. This doesn't count for the time limit, but camera.world-to-viewport-point. Look this up. It's on Unity's documentation. This allows you to determine where a target is. This public transform target, you would assign your player as this, and then you can say if the target is on a certain position in the viewpoint, then something happens. In this case, it's printing target is on the right side or target is on the left side, but you could actually use this to influence the camera's speed. So maybe if you were making a game and you didn't want it to be too difficult, you could actually increase the speed as a player moves towards one side of the camera. You can do lots of neat stuff like that. It's just all slight changes, slight tinkering. Experiment, have fun. I hope you enjoyed this quick tutorial, and I hope it helps you get started creating your own game. All of the assets I used are completely free. They're created by Kenny, and there's a link to his website in the description. If you're interested in some free knowledge, there are two YouTubers I would highly recommend, James and Sebastian. They're both very good, very talented. James is probably better for a beginner. He can take you from the beginning to the end of a project, like a 2D platformer or a 2D RPG or an endless runner. And Sebastian is a little bit more complex, but he can really open your eyes as to what is possible with Unity, and some of the stuff he does could be a game in of itself. I highly recommend both of them. Again, the asset that I used for this video was ProCamera2D, and it can be located on the asset store, and there's a link in the description. It is highly recommended. Good luck on your future projects.